All right, so welcome to the Optimizely Mastering B2B as a Distributor webinar. I am joined here with Rupa Amin, who's a director at Perficient, as well as Jeff Hileman from TestEquity. My name is Trevor. I'm a solution architect, and I'm really excited to have Jeff and Rupa talk to us today, just kind of about some of their experiences. And before we dive into how they're overcoming headwinds, just a real quick overview about Optimizely. So in terms of Optimizely as a company, we're helping thousands of global brands. We have a significant number of customers, and specifically in commerce, the manufacturing distribution contingent of customers is extremely large, and it's an extremely important and passionate part of our customer base that we are thinking about and researching and trying to really empower day over day. The agenda for this discussion is really to introduce both the economic headwinds, kind of the things that we're seeing that are impacting manufacturers and distributors in their B2B businesses, and really how Optimizely's, our partners, our customers are driving success through those challenges. Before I turn it over, I just want to talk about a few things. Number one, specifically, what economic headwinds are impacting B2B growth. And some of this is around just increased costs. So cost of goods sold, in inflation all the way up and down the value chain. Cost also is inclusive of the labor challenges. So there's both retention, there's hiring, there's training overall, and just as products and people and costs go up, how that gets transferred on. Lastly, really around increased digital expectations. And really we see kind of a rising tide of capabilities across all businesses, both impacting the business customers, consumers, B2B2C, like all of those channels with leadership by specific companies like an Amazon or other manufacturer distributor leaders that are both leading the way and increasing expectations across customer base. If we kind of look into more of that, despite those headwinds and changes, we're also seeing this massive increase in online adoption. So industry-wide, we track the kind of adoption of customers and orders and self-service and things like that. McKinsey, is seeing a massive increase in mobile orders since, pre-2019 or pre-2020 when the pandemic hit. We are seeing that ourselves, just in raw customer adoption of digital channels, whether that's order or it's around self-service options, right? So more customers want self-service. In fact, what we're seeing is that every customer wants increased self-service from their buying channels, content channels, how they're getting data. And then lastly, just a higher willingness for customers to make bigger decisions, bigger purchases, and get more from online. So personally, I'm 42. So my family and I do a significant amount of ordering online or in-store pickup, even from pre-2019, 2020. My mom does a significant amount of purchasing for their business and for their household that we're seeing across every generation as far as purchases. And even since I started working at Optimizely, the on-site visit that I would do for companies making commerce decisions, companies that are investing in large commerce and digital changes, it was most deals that I would go and travel in person and talk with customers. It was generally 2 to 3 times a month, 75% of new opportunities that we would be on site to talk with people. In 2023, I'm yet to travel to a customer. In 2022, I did some travel for that, but even within our manufacturing distributor commerce customer base and digital channels, fewer people want the in-person interaction for us. And that has stuck. And that change, I think, is really representative of both distributed sales forces. So manufacturing distributors, not everyone is in the office for them, let alone, my company. And they either don't bring everyone together for every single meeting, or they prefer the online channel. They're doing more research online, and they're making bigger purchase decisions without ever seeing someone in person. It's a change that we're seeing across everything. Now, if we talk about growing through these challenges, again, we see customers utilizing some different capabilities in which to increase adoption, customer satisfaction, the ability for customers to get more online. Personalization is one of those. Again, it's search, it's landing pages, it's increasing both that wallet share, retention, loyalty, again, with giving more options online, as well as removing barriers in terms of whether it's checkout or product data that they can find online, which maybe wasn't online before, or just increasing the ability for them to find the right products, and really across all sales efficiency, right? It's things that were formerly only online. Maybe if it's from advanced configuration, integration with procurement systems, just being able for customers to do everything that they can offline, also giving that level of service online. So no matter how your customer prefers to interact with you, and that interaction is typically in multiple touch points, that the online channel supports customers who want to start, finish, or have their mid-journey with you in terms of purchases and other items. It's really being supported. That's a little bit about kind of what we're seeing. I'm excited to turn it over to Rupa and Jeff, who are going to talk more about the kind of specific things that they're doing and seeing in their business.
Thanks, Trevor. Good morning, good evening. Hello, everyone. Happy to be here. Jeff, welcome to you as well. I think, as Trevor mentioned, some of the challenges that we see, especially in the world of B2B, they're abundant, right? But it takes the right approach. We can probably just take a little bit of a transformation, turn some of these challenges into opportunities for growth and innovation. And I think as we look at just turning some of these challenges into opportunities, it definitely requires a proactive, adaptable, and an innovative approach, but essentially remembering what is at the core, which is to stay customer focused, monitoring where our industry trends are going, but also be open to change and remain competitive. I think that's sort of the ever-evolving state of our B2B landscape. And as Trevor mentioned, there are some of the challenges to just be relevant, to be relative, be able to give customers, meeting their customers' ever-changing demands and needs. How do we turn some of these challenges into opportunities, whether it's through giving them certain capabilities, whether it's personalized interactions or generating and implementing ideas that are going to lead to new products and new services, or just overall investing and optimizing our strategies to reduce that customer acquisition cost. Once we install a website or you have an online presence, it takes a certain smart, skilled strategy to bring those customers onto that platform, and then be able to increase options for them to maintain that retention or maintain that connection. And then as we have advanced into the world of AI, there's so many advancements that are happening in the technological space. How do you stay engaged? How do you stay ahead of the curve? How do we embrace those emerging technologies and turn them into streamlining our operations, enhancing those customer experiences, be able to gain a competitive edge is really what we're here to talk about. But overall, if we were to sum that up, it's really what our TestEquity story has been. So Jeff, I don't know if you want to kind of add to some of the points here before we jump into how we have achieved sort of our role of success in our story for growth.
I think you nailed this, Rupa. I'm happy to jump into what we've done to overcome these challenges.
Yes, let's talk about it. What is Punch Out? It is scary. I think a lot of people that I have talked to, the first word is just so scary, but it's actually quite simple. It's really an ability for a buyer and a seller to come together, build a collaborative communication protocol, if you will. And there's so many different standardized places or technologies that are built to support the punch out transactions, but it also, from a business standpoint, it's low to no cost. It has very little maintenance once you get it going. It allows our buyers to be able to manage their expenditures on their purchases. It's automated invoicing, whether it's through connecting through the backend systems or just maintaining those transactions just within your application itself, your own procurement system. And then also be able to automate a lot of your workflows. Oftentimes we find that the integration between your punch out website and basically your procurement system can be quite complex. It requires a lot of translations, understanding of what the product concept looks like in each systems, but industry-wide, it's a very well-known concept. And Jeff, we've been using punch out for TestEquity. Would you tell us a little bit about how it has changed the dynamic for you and the people that you work with within the TestEquity organization?
Yeah, certainly. And it's kind of a funny word, punch out. When I ask people who aren't familiar with it what they think it means, it's either like punching out their time card, or sometimes I'll get, yeah, it's a Nintendo video game from the 90s. So it's certainly kind of a funny thing. But stepping outside of punch out for a moment and just general e-procurement. So I think e-procurement's on track to grow about 20%, B2B e-procurement in 2023. We wrapped up 2022 B2B e-procurement. I think total market cap was about 1 trillion. And that's growing. So what I've seen happen is, during the pandemic, when we were all sent home to go work remotely, if you were a buyer, you were outfitted with a P card because you didn't have access to your ERP to go through your typical procurement processes, because now you're working from home on a laptop. So you're given a P card and kind of sent out into the Wild West, and e-commerce spiked up in B2B because now everybody's buying on a credit card instead of going through their procurement process. Then over the period of about 2 years, that's got wrangled back together into e-procurement. So now the Coupa, Jagger, Ariba, S4HANA, and so on, those projects have concluded. Buyers have now consolidated all that P card purchasing back into e-procurement portals, and they're demanding their suppliers participate. So we're certainly seeing that, and that just means that if you're not doing e-procurement, you're missing out, and you're not even getting invited to the party. And that's even before we talk about the catalog side and punch out.
Right. Was it scary as it sounds to everybody else in the industry?
It certainly shouldn't be. It doesn't need to be.
Right. Trevor, you can advance us to the next slide. Let's talk about some of the immediate impacts, at least that Jeff mentioned, we've seen with punch out at TestEquity, right? So being able to give powers to our buyers. Buyer network is changing. It's ever changing. The way our buyers shop with us, interact with us, want to collaborate with us has changed over the pandemic for sure. And they have had a lot of the information at hand, but now it's just circulated to them in a different format, right? So punch out allows you to be able to compare your products from different vendors, be able to purchase only from those approved vendors, right? Because we want to make sure that we maintain that global view of our procurement system, and then only buy from the sellers that we know and recognize, and also just are fitted nicely into our internal purchasing system. How do we reduce a lot of that procurement cost and not having to deal with a lot of the headache that comes with the workflow that happens once you select your products, right? So those are some of the immediate impacts that we have seen from a buyer side. And then contradictory on the seller side, it just allows sellers to be able to connect with the buyer network through an e-commerce presence that they already have. They already have the accounts. They already have the site. They know how to navigate through the site. We've created some of those experiences, and we'll talk about a little bit in a second. The order automation piece, so not having to deal with past papers or deal with walking to different desks, and be able to just increase your wallet share, be able to cross-sell and upsell your products. And I think, Jeff, we were talking about an example the other day where whether it's direct or indirect, while I'm looking for this one product, there could be a possibility that we have bumped up a product for an upsell or a cross-sell that a seller may not have had the opportunity in the traditional space.
Yeah, it's true. There's certainly benefits on both sides. And as you were just saying, there's kind of this like dance, if you will, sometimes between a buyer and a seller in punch out, where a savvy buyer, when approached with a punch out or a catalog conversation, would say, all right, before we talk about any kind of integration, let's talk about discounting. And that's totally acceptable. So that's often where it starts. And then on the seller side, you're thinking, okay, how do I maximize wallet share and expose my depth and breadth of my catalog to this buyer who may just be purchasing a subset of my products today. So there's a little bit of a like back and forth there. On the buyer side as well, often they want restrictions, like maybe they can't purchase certain brands. You mentioned approved vendors, so you would restrict the catalog to maybe even particular commodity codes. Whereas on the seller, you don't want that, right? Like you want to expose the entire catalog to them. So that's kind of a fun back and forth that happens often. But either way, it ends up well for both sides. On the seller side, really the order automation is can't be understated.
Yeah.
Taking away the receipt of a purchase order over email, manually keying it into my ERP, that costs money from the order entry side all the way through to accounting. Whereas if you're just electronically delivering that order into your ERP, EDI, CXML, what have you, and then pick, packing, and shipping, this is the next physical touch point, you're saving costs along the way. So there certainly is benefits on both sides, but you've got to walk a fine line sometimes between them because it's a little bit of a give and take. And what I will say for sellers is don't be afraid to say no. Sometimes buyers might just want a punch out catalog to price compare and shop. Not shop, but really just check your prices and compare it against your competitors, and maybe not deliver orders electronically. So if you're a seller and you're not getting the benefits we're mentioning here, you can tell your buyers no, and just refuse to do a punch out with them, because it really should be mutually beneficial on both sides.
Yes, making those smart choices, right? Picking those right buyer network or the buyer customers that you want to work with. But really, as we talk about some of the challenges that Trevor talked about, that you and I have talked about, is punch out really the only solution? And I think the answer is no, because there's so many different ways we can cater to our customers' needs, not only through just enabling them through connecting these backend systems, but also just building a front-end experience that streamlines a lot of their check-in, check-out workflow, right? So as we talk about our own punch-out story and our own ways of increasing that wallet share, what value punch-out drives for us, really talking about that improved checkout experience and how that has led into the conversion rate optimization overall.
You certainly have an opportunity to customize your catalog experience to really fit, kind of unique B2B needs, differing from B2C. Mentioned a couple examples here, like allowing the buyer to set a preferred ship via, so when the orders come through, they can specify that. Could be something like where you've got a buyer who maybe buys on behalf of a variety of customers, so they're more like a reseller or maybe an SI or something. And you don't want to do a punch out integration for each of their customers. It could be 20, 30, 50 maybe. So you want to do one integration, but you want to be able to invoice them at their individual bill tos based upon where they're shipping to. So like B2B specific customizations like that are pretty powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's really about it on the punch out side, Rupa. Certainly when we talk about the checkout experience,
yes,
there definitely is like a bit of a parlay into punch out, because you are going through the funnel to a certain extent with punch out, but it differs from e-commerce.
For sure, for sure. Would you want us to kind of just share a little bit about our own checkout experience and sprinkle in some of those benefits and gains from the punch out story? If you want to advance us to the next slide, please, Trevor.
Yeah, so transitioning from punch out, so we're talking about kind of punch out opportunities and what you could do there. And like Rupa said, that's not the only way to maximize wallet share. Now looking more at just the traditional e-commerce experience and how to increase conversion rate for B2B. So a little bit of a different story here. What I'll start by saying is that the B2B buyer mindset and shopping behavior really does differ from B2C. I find usually that B2B buyers are much simpler in the sense that they're looking for three things, and that's, do you have the manufacturer part number I'm looking for? Checkbox number one. Do you have stock? Because I probably need it for a bill of materials right now.
Right now.
And then, is the price reasonable? Maybe you've got maps, so it's not even a relevant conversation. And if you check those three boxes, that buyer's gonna go through the funnel and they're gonna try a checkout, probably 90+% of the time. That said, B2B buyers, they are tough, persistent critters, and they will power through a poor funnel experience. But if you offer that, they will likely not come back and buy from you again. So even though you will capture that one sale because you checked those three boxes, they're going to remember, boy, that website was awful. I had a bunch of rage clicking and wait times and white space, and they're not going to come back. So what we found is, in order to maximize conversion rate and get those buyers to have a good experience, is you really have to provide that in the funnel. And there is some unique things to B2B. So here we're showing an example of where super common scenario. I'm an engineer at a manufacturer, and I've got some products I need to get over to my buyer. So I build out kind of like a bill of materials. In this case, it's a cart. And what I would usually do is like take a screenshot of the cart, print it out, walk it over to the buyer and say, hey, can you go buy these things for me? So doing little things like giving them the ability to just share the cart. So build out the cart, send the buyer an email, buyer gets a nice email, clicks add to cart, and they can go through the checkout process. Little tweaks like that make a big difference in B2B.
Knowing those internal intricacies of the business processes our customers have to go through is such a key to building that experience, right? So
yeah, it definitely is, Rupa. And looking more at the funnel, so if you do anything during the checkout process that takes the buyer out of that and over to another page on your site, for example, here, maybe they want to change their address and they select change address and it takes them over to a separate address book page, and then they have to go back to the cart or the checkout process, it adds friction and disruption. So doing little things like introducing the ability to create a new address right there in the page and then take you back to checkout just reduces that friction. So little improvements like what you see here with that modal popping out on the right.
Yeah, and as we look at the next slide here on a lot of the payment options that you offer to the customer, that also plays a key part. Oftentimes we see terms used to be our traditional ways of paying for your orders online, but we've definitely seen a shift in that, and that has required us to pivot as well, to be able to provide that enhanced credit card entry, or in some cases financing options, if that's the case of your business as well, right?
We're certainly not getting away from terms at any point, and that's a good, healthy part of the business.
Yes.
But like I mentioned before, once buyers were sent home to work remotely, they were often outfitted with a P card, and you'll see $10,000, $30,000 transactions on an Amex. It's not common, but it certainly does happen. Whereas those transactions would typically go through terms or some kind of traditional procurement method. We do see that as credit card transactions, and this is just another example of where instead of taking the customer to another page out of the checkout process to go add a card, let them do it right there. Your goal here is to keep them in the checkout process because you've already checked those three boxes. And if you make it easy for them to go through all the way to the place order button, they're likely going to come back because they had a positive experience.
Right. And if we were to marry this story back into our punch out experience, it's really flexible in that sense that you may not have to go all the way through on the e-commerce side when you're leveraging punch out part of this experience, right? Because it's not different. And then it allows the procurement systems to be able to still maintain those backend EDI transactions, leverage those connections, and not have to shift the gears there as well. So I find that as a huge benefit from leveraging punch out as sort of a interactive experience between a buyer and a seller.
Certainly sellers don't want to go and rebuild all of their integrations, so for sure.
And
And then lastly, Rupa, I would just say as part of the conversion process, the order confirmation page. This seems like it should be really simple and we shouldn't really have to say anything about it. But I have seen some pretty bad B2B order confirmation pages where that we're trying to do upselling and like saying, hey, you know, did you consider this? It's like stuff already after the sale. And my comments on this is just keep the order confirmation very simple. All the buyer cares about is, I just want to know, did you get my order? Is the things in there that I wanted, are they in there? And I'm good. Don't overcomplicate the order confirmation page.
that's well said. Is it really just building the e-commerce website in the one go, and Trevor, you can advance us, or do you feel like it's an ongoing thing? Why do people feel like it's e-commerce is a one-time effort?
I think it's just lack of knowledge. And you know, for anybody who's in here and has a board or owners or a CFO that thinks of e-commerce as a one-time project, you know, I feel for you. I've certainly been there. That's not the case. You know, this just like we're saying here, it's like a child. It requires care and feeding, continuous development. You can't just build a website, be done with it one time, and expect to build a successful e-commerce business. It needs continuous development.
Yeah, and as we continue to build our growth story with Optimizely, TestEquity, I feel like a lot of the capabilities, a lot of the challenges that we see are definitely helping us bring that connected viewpoint and bring that customer into sort of our own network and be part of our own growth story.
Thank you, Rupa. Thank you, Jeff. Really appreciate your perspective and kind of seeing all that you are doing. Andres, did you want to wrap us up, or do you want me to wrap us up from here?
Yeah, I'll wrap us up here, Trev. Jeff, Rupa, thank you so much for all the insights today. We have another session starting at the top of the hour. Be sure to join that session. It is our last session of B2B Commerce Summit 2023. We've really enjoyed having all of you join us throughout these last 2 days of really great, insightful sessions. For any questions around this presentation, definitely reach out to us, but this recording will be made available on demand by the end of the week, so you can watch this, share it with any of your colleagues or someone you think would benefit from this. So huge thank you to our audience. Thank you to Jeff and Rupa and Trevor as well. Thank you all and have a good rest of your week.